Here in Salinas, all of the drinking water comes from ground. But for some mysterious reason that we haven't been able to uncover yet, this well is not functioning right now.
Puerto Rico's water supply is at risk. Over nearly 50 years, federal and local tax exemptions brought big industry to the island. But with economic expansion came environmental impact.
There are a lot of Superfund sites as well as other hazardous waste sites. There are many industrial facilities that have disposed of waste. There's also all sorts of coal ash, and there are other types of waste that have contaminated the waters.
The cleanup of these sites take a long time, and some of them we have to continue to undergo groundwater, in many cases in Puerto Rico, monitoring for a long time.
And on an island that is uniquely vulnerable to water contamination, Puerto Ricans already suffer the consequences. So what's really going on with Puerto Rico's water?
The water is extracted by pumps, and there's some kind of filtration process, some cleaning process that the Puerto Rico Aqueduct and Sewer Authority does for the water, and then it's delivered through the pipes.
Surrounded by the Caribbean Sea, Puerto Ricans get a lot of their drinking water from aquifers running through the north and south of the island.
A fair amount of Puerto Rico does rely on groundwater. Many people think that water should be protected because it's underground, but contaminants can be sucked into that.
A third of the island is karst, limestone soil, so obviously this is very porous. Contaminated water can leach through those resources, and specifically one of the main concerns is if it's near any drinking water. The Superfund program, it's a well-designed program with a number of different steps. These are the most contaminated sites in the United States.
Historically, many industries have contributed to groundwater pollution in Puerto Rico. If we look at one of these Superfund sites that has been on the national priorities list for decades, the EPA names 6 parties potentially responsible for the contamination.
This is the so-called Fibers Superfund site. It's a Superfund site that was set up well over 20 years ago when the pollution from the different industries in the area was contributing to the pollution with the solvents that they use.
As part of an acquisition, Pfizer took on partial liability for the Superfund site in 2010. And a representative for Pfizer told ABC News EPA's most recent review of the site confirms that the remediation remains protective of human health and the environment. Water contamination isn't a new issue in Puerto Rico. Environmental scientists like Neftali Garcia have been thinking about this issue since the 70s, and he's worked with activists like Julio Lopez Varona to address the issues.
Not only pharmaceutical companies and chemical companies. All these industries are in Puerto Rico because of the tax exemption of 1947, Operación Manos a la Obra. And they said, well, we are generating jobs and so on and so forth. But what were the consequences? Air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, rivers pollution. Once you pollute underground water, cleaning the aquifer is extremely difficult, and it takes decades, if ever it would become clean.
The theory is that the federal EPA and the territorial government will come in and look at this contamination. They'll require the polluter to figure out the extent of the contamination problem and then require them to clean up.
If you dispose of polluted water into landfills in different municipalities, eventually that polluted water will get into surface water of creeks, rivers, and into underground water.
And this isn't just an issue with industry. Water utilities have had issues as well. In 2015, the National Resource Defense Council examined Puerto Rico's water compliance record and found widespread violations.
We did a nationwide survey of compliance and violations and found that Puerto Rico had by far the worst compliance record and the most violations of any territory or state in the whole country.
The water, it's not good. Always it's white, the water, because of the Clorox that they use, they put on the water. You can see it, you can taste it. Sometimes the customers ask for a tap water, and I always said that the water here is not good.
I've been at meetings at public housing projects where presumably people don't even have sufficient to make ends meet, and when I ask for water, I get a bottle of water in a home.
But it's not just water contamination. Puerto Rico is a water insecure nation, an island with finite water supplies. And the effects of climate change have only made matters worse. Longer periods of drought have already caused Puerto Ricans to occasionally ration water. Meanwhile, huge amounts of water are being siphoned off to industrial complexes. In the northern town of Barceloneta, a municipality dominated by manufacturing, industrial groundwater withdrawals were estimated at 1.3 million gallons per day.
In the case of our area, southeastern Puerto Rico is extracted mostly from what is known as the South Coast Aquifer. The South Coast Aquifer has been designated as a critical state. It's being depleted. Here in Salinas, the groundwater, the aquifer, is the only source of potable water for the roughly 30,000 residents of this community. So these are like what are sometimes called environmental justice communities, right? With high concentrations of polluting activities at the same time that, very poor people, poor communities. And so there's an overburdening of those communities by the pollution.
Some experts worry that the tools to monitor the water are inadequate. And if discharge violations go unchecked, pollution has the potential to impact the water supply across Puerto Rico. And
unfortunately, most of those chemicals are not required to be tested for by drinking water utilities. So, the situation is pretty serious if you've got a big contamination problem.
The classic trade-off between jobs, the economy, and the environment and public health that we understand doesn't necessarily need to be that way. We can have, of course, production of products that are necessary for societies without necessarily polluting to the extent that we're seeing here.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.